Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookham here. Today I wish to do a reaction video on the first interview that I had with Kurt Marnul, and that I just posted a couple of days ago. So to reiterate on Kurt's statements, here they are again, point by point. Kurt states the following in our interview: that he was an Olympic weightlifter, a powerlifter and a bodybuilder, a record holder in the bench press, that he followed a whole food diet like most silver era bodybuilders and golden era bodybuilders did. He took some protein powders like Biocolan and others, which is basically a collagen based powder. What he also stated in the interview was that he used an anabolic steroid cycle, namely primobolan injection once a week and 2 times 5 milligram Dynabol tablets daily. And of course, the most revealing part of the interview was that he said that Steve Reeves, Mr. Universe, and the later actor that played Hercules taught him the secret of anabolic steroids in 1958. And he taught him the cycle that I just mentioned, that is the primobolan injection and Dynabol tablets, that Kurt would of course use and later pass on this information onto his students, of course his students such as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now I just really want to get to the most important part of this these statements really, but I do wish to also briefly go through each of his claims to see if they are valid or not. So just briefly, an introduction about Kurt Marnul. He was born on May 30th, 1929 in Graz and began weightlifting and bodybuilding in his teens. Kurt definitely was an Olympic weightlifter and was an Austrian pioneer really, and a legend in the sports of weightlifting, powerlifting and bodybuilding, having established the Graz Athletic Union in, of course, Graz, Austria in 1958. In this sport club, he formed a weightlifting team, which would then compete against other clubs and teams as shown in these photos. And of course, Arnold was part of this club and took part in these weightlifting and powerlifting meets as well. As a bodybuilder, Kurt Marnul, at least from my research, appears to have won the Mr. Austria and other competitions like the Mr. Hercules in Austria between the years 1961 and 1964, which is what Kurt actually said in the interview that we had, and is also evidenced by the several photos that I've collected from my magazine collection. But from here on, some of Kurt's claims get a bit sketchy or exaggerated. He claims to have won the Mr. Europe and as well as the Mr. Universe competition, but as far as I could do my research, he achieved 6th place, for example, in the Mr. Europe in 1961, which apparently was his best placing, and a 13th placing at the FIHC Mr. Universe, losing to names such as Tommy Kono. So yeah, I mean, some of his claims are right, some of them are, obviously not. Kurt was a record holder in the bench press, and although he stated in our other interview that his record, I haven't actually posted this interview yet, but he's stated in another interview that his record was 235 kilograms on the bench press. I couldn't actually verify this, although I was able to confirm his other records such as a 180 kilogram bench press and a 220 kilogram bench press, which still is very, very strong for his body weight of 82 kilos, at least that's what he states. Other sources state that he was 90 kilograms at the time. Regardless, it's a very, very strong weight to be pushing, basically 2 to 2.5 times his body weight. Fantastic achievement. And although others actually say, as he was 90, still think it was fantastic. Anyway, he was extremely strong and apparently stronger than Arnold. Now we finally come to his claims of Steve Reeves teaching him about the availability of steroids and how to cycle them. Now, according to Kurt Marnul, he met Steve Reeves while Steve Reeves was on holiday in Europe in 1958, and if I heard him correctly, he actually said it was during Steve's honeymoon after he got married. Now, if you look online, you will find several clips on YouTube of Steve's first wedding to Sandra Smith, which was on the 31st of January in 1955, not 1958. So, I don't know about you, but if you use common sense, you would realize that this statement could not be true. I mean, if Steve just married in early 1955, why would he wait until 1958 to go on honeymoon? Doesn't make sense. Especially seeing he divorced Sandra Smith a year later in 1956. So, yeah, it's like saying, yeah, let's get married, then get divorced the year after, and 2 years later go on the honeymoon we never had. So, just for all time's sake, no, sorry. That just sounds ridiculous, so I don't think that Kurt is telling the truth here. And yeah. Of course, other people will argue that Steve could have been married and honeymooned again later, and this actually did occur. He actually married again in 1963, marrying Aline Charjevich. I hope I'm saying that right. But again, the dates are completely inconsistent. We're talking 1963, not 1958. And if anyone wishes to argue that Reeves could have met Kurt in 1958 during a honeymoon to Europe, then, why would he go out of his way during a honeymoon to go to Austria to meet Kurt? I don't know. It doesn't really sound like it's a very reasonable or smart thing to do. I don't know about you, but if you're a man, you're on your honeymoon, the only thing you really have on your mind is, what, right? You just want to have sex with your partner. So you wouldn't be like, hang on, honey, let me take a short trip to Austria, to this little town of Graz, and visit my buddy because I need to share some information about anabolic steroids. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, a telegram would have sufficed, but anyway. Finally, for anyone that has done any research at all into this matter, Kurt is known to have actually changed his stories. Years earlier, in Wendy Leigh's unauthorized biography of Arnold, Wendy interviewed Kurt, and in this biography, Kurt stated that he met Steve in 1952 and not in 1958. So he's also changed his stories. Again, this could not have been possible because records show that Steve did not travel to Europe until much, much later on, as at that time he was trying to establish himself as an actor in the US, and I'm talking about the early 1950s. That's when Steve was trying to break into his acting career. Anyway, I think I have established that it is very unlikely that Steve met Kurt in Europe in 1958. But let's just suppose, for argument's sake, that Kurt got his dates muddled up and somehow he met Steve Reeves, and Steve Reeves did actually teach him about steroids and how to cycle them, specifically telling Kurt to take 1 primobolan injection a week and dianabol tablets daily in the year of 1958 or God knows when. Doing a quick search on Wikipedia, we find out that primobolan was not available for medical use until 1962, 4 years after Kurt apparently learned the steroid secret from Steve Reeves, which again doesn't make any sense. Dianabol, on the other hand, was patented in 1957 and was being sold in the US in 1958, so at least this drug was available in 1958. Regardless, it doesn't seem like Kurt's story adds up because of all of these inconsistencies. Another valid argument in defense of Steve Reeves is why, if after retiring from competition, would Reeves ever learn about or think about taking steroids? This when you actually reflect on this, it actually doesn't make much sense. He's past his bodybuilding career. Why would he think, back in those days especially, about getting more massive using steroids? Doesn't make sense. It is obvious that when we compare the photos of Reeves during his bodybuilding career, he was way, way bigger than in his movies. When you actually look at his movies, he looks natural and at times even untrained. And that's because he actually, if you've read his biographies, he actually states that he didn't have much time to train at all. And so the argument that he didn't take steroids during his bodybuilding career, but then took them during his movie career, like some people continue to argue, is pretty ridiculous. It's very illogical. Others would argue that Reeves never took steroids, but perhaps knew about them. That is possible. But again, he may have known about Nelevar or Dianabol, as they were available in the 1950s, but not primobolan. So this statement again by Kurt just doesn't make any sense. Further on, in defense of Steve Reeves, as mentioned prior, when Wendy Leigh came out with the unauthorized biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger decades ago, Steve was made aware of the allegations made by Kurt Marnul back then and had this to say about the whole matter. Now, this statement is taken directly from Building the Classic Physique, and let me just read directly from page 171. Steve Reeves, quote, "That statement has also been brought to my attention by a friend who surfs the internet. No, it is not true. I never heard of steroids until the mid-1960s, and I was never in France during the 1950s. My first trip to France was in 1948 when I entered and won the Mr. World contest in Cannes. My second trip to France was not until 1960 when I attended the premiere of my movie The Last Days of Pompeii. I have never heard of Kurt Marnul, and I don't know what motive he had in making that statement to Arnold. I can only speculate that he might have mixed me up with another bodybuilder of that period, or that he was trying to impress Arnold by telling him that he knew me, end quote. Well, Steve is wrong in that Kurt didn't say that to Arnold. He actually said it to Wendy Lay. Other than that, that was Steve's statement. And yeah, I mean, as I said, records show that he wasn't in Europe at that time. Now, Kurt Marnul is not the first man to actually make steroid allegations against Steve Reeves. Sergio Oliva actually goes further and claims that Steve Reeves took steroids like Dianabol, and I also find this extremely unlikely because the first steroids again were synthesized in the mid to late 1950s, well after Steve Reeves had retired from competition. Anyone that knows their bodybuilding history knows that Reeves won the Mr. America in 1947, the Mr. World in 1948, and the Mr. Universe in 1950. Again, during these dates, he could not have taken any Primobolan, Dianabol, Nilevar, etc. because it simply was not available. It's like saying that Steve had a mobile phone in the 1940s. I mean, it didn't exist, right? And neither did these steroids. So these allegations are just crazy. So that means that Sergio's claims go flying out the window. And if any of you believe this, then yeah, check yourself. Now, there are, of course, other more credible allegations made against Steve Reeves, which are worth arguing, and that is by Bill Barrett. This guy is a fellow bodybuilder and doctor from the late 1940s and early 1950s who claimed in the Florida Weight Man, that's a magazine from the 1960s, I believe, that Reeves, in the Florida Weight Man magazine, Bill Barrett claims that Reeves was using testosterone to win the Mr. America and the Mr. Universe titles. Out of all the allegations ever made about Steve Reeves, this, I hate to admit, is the one that makes most sense and that is most credible. It's the most credible of all. Now, let me make this clear, though. I am not stating that Reeves took testosterone or experimented with it, but in the realms of possibility, the possibility definitely exists. And although Steve Reeves has stated several times that he never took testosterone and said this famous statement, to quote Steve Reeves, "I don't believe in bodybuilders using steroids. If a man doesn't have enough male hormones in his system to create a nice, hard, muscular body, he should take up ping pong," end quote. So yeah, we will never really know the truth because unfortunately Steve Reeves is no longer with us. In summary, although Kurt's recollection of his successful bodybuilding and powerlifting career is mostly accurate, I definitely do not believe his claims about Steve Reeves teaching him about steroids because none of the facts add up. And again, I invite you to check the resources that I've stated and you will see that his statement has no basis. If anything, it is well known that during the early 1950s, Eastern Europe was already experimenting with synthetic testosterone, as was reported in the 1952 Olympics. And later, this first anabolic steroids like Nilevar and Dianabol were made available during the mid to late 1950s and also experimented with worldwide, including by bodybuilders. So in my opinion, Kurt, being an Olympic weightlifter, probably found out about anabolics through his discussions with other weightlifters and other bodybuilders in Eastern Europe and learned about steroids through his competitive years, most likely improving his knowledge as time went on. It is well documented that he experimented on his own Olympic weightlifting team in Graz. And it's very obvious, especially when you see these photos of his club, the Athletic Union, the Graz Athletic Union, and you can clearly see that there's Arnold looking super swole. So you know that Kurt Marnul was obviously recommending these products to his young proteges. Finally, I have one thing to say, and that is that I found it very, very disheartening and disappointing that about half of the comments I received after I posted the first interview with Kurt were of people trashing Reeves's natty status, completely accepting everything that was said with face value only and not even bothering to do any research whatsoever. And unfortunately, it reflects just on how poorly people process information these days. It seems to me that one can say anything on the internet these days and it is immediately taken as fact without question, at least to some people, and that's pretty sad. I find this lack of intellectual processing of information really, really sad. To those that actually bothered to research and dispute Kurt's claim, of which there were several of you people, well done. I thank you really for showing some brains, for showing some guts, as it shows that some people still have character out there. So well done. Anyway, I do hope you have enjoyed this reaction video, which has been rather exhaustive, and I will be bringing the next interview with Kurt Marnul in the next video. If you've enjoyed this video, please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and please leave me your comments. If you have more to add than what was already mentioned, that was already discussed, I invite you to comment on. I know that there will be the odd person who will most likely comment something like, nah, I don't believe you, Reeves took Primabol and Dianabol. And yeah, well, what can I say about these fools? Good luck to them, right? I mean, yeah, empty shells. So anyway, that's it from me. Hope you enjoyed the video. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. Now, if you're interested in learning Arnold's original bodybuilding training and nutrition principles, please visit my website for a full collection of booklets, including his arms and chest training programs, available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Iron Man Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, I mean, there's so much stuff that probably hasn't been proven by science, and it will take science to prove or disprove Vince. But to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's principles to bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles. But how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And believe me, it's a brilliant, brilliant program. Many people have used it. I know personally a lot of bodybuilders that have actually used it and made fantastic results with it. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these 3 books, as I call it, the Classic Physique Bundle, Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Now, the Pro Series of Bodybuilding, which was targeted for professional bodybuilders, contains 6 programs, each of which go for 2 months each. So it's a whole year, again, in preparation for competition. To support your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm for merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again, at teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/goldenerabookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. To take full advantage of my collaborations, use code GEB20 with NSPnutrition.com and VinceGironda.com, as well as code BOOKWORM12 at OSL.com for a discount at checkout.